Thank you for inviting me to the ASMA 2019 conference on digital transformation of academia. I think this is a very important topic, and I'm so sorry I cannot be there in person. I would like to make a few preliminary remarks about the conference and the award recipients, especially, and then go into my formal presentation, which primarily will talk about learning in the digital age. I think this theme about digital transformation is more urgent and important. If anything can be digitized, it'll be disrupted. And knowledge is one of those content that can be digitized very easily. By digitization, we can make the knowledge last forever. So the perishability of knowledge as a content also goes away in the process. In the days when we communicated verbally from one guru to one chela in India, going to those ancient academies in India, in Greece, the knowledge was highly perishable and it got transformed over the way, translated differently by each disciple. Today, the knowledge in the print age and, of course, in the digital age can be stored forever. And knowledge is an appreciative asset, unlike physical products, which are all depreciative assets. So, let me first comment on behalf of the Academy of Indian Marketing. I'm very pleased that in partnership with ASMA, Academy of Indian Marketing has decided to also recognize several luminaries in the Indian higher education system by bestowing them certain awards. Of course, the Lifetime Achievement Award goes to Father Abraham, who has done a remarkable job in transforming, creating XLRI as a major college university for the Lifetime Achievement Award. And of course, this is followed by several people who are getting a long tenure award. They have been in the job for a long period of time, and that includes Dr. Harivansh Chaturvedi at BIMTech, Dr. Rajan Saxena at Narsimunji Institute, NMIMS, Dr. Uday Shalunke at Wellinger Group Director, Dr. Karuna Jain, both at IIT Bombay in managing the Sales Management School of Business, but also at NITI as the director, Dr. Y.K. Bhushan as the Vice Chancellor of ICFA University and a legendary person in his own right, and Dr. Asha Pachpande at ASM Institute as well as Pune University. If you look at the combined wisdom and experience of these people, it is more than 500 years of legacy. I think it is our obligation to recognize the legacy, the wisdom, the contribution they have made toward higher education in management, especially, as well as, of course, non management disciplines when they've all become vice chancellors. It is remarkable. My congratulations to all of you. Again, I'm so sorry I cannot be there in person. My formal presentation is about learning in the digital age. The digital revolution is here. Digital technology is more transformative of society than any other prior technology we created during the agricultural age, mechanization of agriculture, industrial age, the industrial revolution as we talk about, and of course the infrastructure technologies such as the railways or telecommunications. They're all infrastructure technologies and they all made a difference. Think about it. At the turn of the last century, less than 20 years ago, there was no WhatsApp, Facebook, Google, YouTube, Skype, or Twitter, or Instagram. The internet and the World Wide Web has reduced the degrees of separation. What we thought in psychology was 6 degrees of separation is now down to 1 degree of separation, or zero for that matter. Cell phones cloud computing, and apps for everything in life. There are millions and millions of apps now on the iPhone platform or the Android platform. Remarkable. Social media such as Facebook, as I mentioned, Instagram, as I mentioned, Twitter, and WhatsApp has surpassed more than 2 billion users, and they're connected with each other. There is more user generated content today. Wikipedia, which is semi scholarly on the one hand, or YouTube, which is mass market content created. Today, I can go on YouTube and learn anything what to do. All the skills and how to programs are in YouTube than publishing industry can ever produce. So the balance is no longer publishers creating content as users creating content. Peer-to-peer content creation is becoming a much larger industry. I am very intrigued about Google. Google search today is probably the best library in the world, surpassing Library of Congress, which was thought was the largest library. And I can do search on Google in any language, on anything, and I'm amazed. I experiment that just to experience myself. So I challenge some very vocabulary or sort of a native language phrases, etc. I'm a Gujarati, so I go into Gujarat within that one, Kutch, for example, within that one specific geography, a saying in that one, and Google has it. It's mind boggling. It transcends time, transcends distance. Interesting. And very important that we need to recognize is that digital storage is a real transformation because ultimately knowledge is stored somehow either in the mind of the guru, for example, or in a printed textbook or a book or a theory, whatever they write. And today it can be stored in a small, small device. Digital storage is cheaper than the paper. And that's absolutely mind-boggling capability. So we have to learn and teach in colleges how to curate the knowledge, just like you learn if you want to be a museum director, how to cure the content or how to cure the artifacts of ancient civilizations or modern civilizations. Today, one can store the entire Library of Congress on a little jump drive and carry it everywhere. I can carry the library in my pocket. That's mind boggling, and this is all in the last 20 years that we know. So, here is the punchline neither public policy nor even accreditation process, which I'm very much supportive, will transform higher education as much as digital technology. And we have seen this impact in the publishing industry by definition. Now we are going to see on the campuses physically, and therefore I will talk about a fundamental shift that we need to learn about impact on higher education. Our higher education is brick and mortar business. It is location bound. We build buildings, we build a campus, and it is time bound. We offer courses, we do research at a certain time. That's our current reality. But with digital technology and the internet connectivity, with bigger pipelines coming out, mobile broadband as it is called, mobile computing, that is from 4G to 5G when it comes, for example, we will be neither time bound, we will be time agnostic 24/7 or location bound, location agnostic. Knowledge cannot be contained by time and by location, just like any retailing business. Today, online retailing is growing faster and faster, doing a surprisingly more effective job than physical stores. I remember last year, 2018, there were 2,800 stores closed. In 2019, the numbers will be even more. Large retail chains like Radio Shack or Toys R Us have totally gone with thousands of stores closed down. Banks are closing down branches, at least in advanced countries. Lack of labor, not enough demand. People would rather do banking online on their cell phone or on their PC. So the fundamental impact of digital technology would be what is location bound becomes location agnostic, and what is time bound becomes time agnostic. Just as planes, trains, and automobiles engaged personal mobility or created personal mobility, I could be born here and work some other place, settle some other place. The internet enables knowledge mobility. So, what was a people mobility now is also knowledge mobility. So, how will this impact higher education? Here are the ways that I've identified. Just as printing transformed non literate or oral knowledge and oral wisdom to literate written education, which is what we do today, digital technology will transform literate education to what I call visual education. In other words, video will be the dominant medium, not print. Print will be peripheral. When peripheral becomes core, will core become the peripheral? There's a typical debate going on among the publishing industries, journals, for example. Why should it remain alphanumeric? Is it possible for me to have a top scholarly paper delivered in a video format as opposed to in a print format? I think it's very doable. And as a scientist and a scholar, I can communicate more effectively my findings with enthusiasm and passion. I can have an interactivity with the audience, real time. They can raise questions. Publications in print journals, that's not possible. Publications in textbooks for college teaching, that's not possible. This liberates enormously. So here are the 9 different ways I think the digital revolution will impact higher education. First, library goes to the laptop. In America, students really don't go to the library, at least not to read the books or the journals. They go to the library to find a space where they're using their laptop, or quite a few people use their iPad, any mobile device. Very key shift. Therefore, library is available not when the librarians are available, but 24/7. Content is all digitized online, and I can access that through intranet within the campus or through the internet from anywhere in the world. Classroom goes flipping. This is becoming much more immediate things where the professors, like me, lecture in front of a studio camera. Students read or listen to that lecture, whatever assignments we give, and then we meet in the class not to give the lecture, but to provide discussion on that lecture with more examples, more relevance, contemporary. So my concepts may remain invariant, same, but the context changes every classroom. I can talk about the latest event that took place, let's say business related, marketing related, geopolitically, and connect to the lecture. So flipping the class is becoming very real, blending both physical and digital. I will talk a little more about the third implication, which is called the 3 I's of learning. Learning will go away from the 3 R's of learning to 3 I's of learning. Learning will be interactive, integrated between different disciplines, and actually, in fact, individualized. We'll talk about in more depth about that point. Unprecedented scale and scope. So if you take today the MOOCs like Coursera or edX, they reach millions of people all over the world at the same time, or asymmetric anytime. I am told that I am Bangalore by going on edX platform. I am X platform of their own, as well as Swayam, which is what the government has created. They now have already enrollment of 1 million students. Not all of them complete the course, but even if 10% complete the course, sit for the examination, get the college credit, it's an enormous reach they have now rather than being the Bangalore campus or opening one more campus some other place, as many of you have done. So unprecedented scale and scope, geography, physical, wherever they are. It's global reach. So I can create content even though it is meant for India. There is somebody out there who would like to take that course because he or she is specializing on India. We hire professors who are regional experts, Latin American professors, India professors, South Asia professors, Chinese experts. I don't have to do that anymore in America. Some professor in China I can access. And by the way, today, surprisingly, not so surprising on reflection, just like the celebrity chefs, we are now creating celebrity professors. Professors may not need the institution as much because they have their own followers. And these followers are getting larger and larger in number, just like the celebrity. So, celebrity professors are here today. Watch the trend out of India because we have some brilliant people who do not need the institution. Institution actually may be a block. MOOCs everywhere. I think we as an industry in higher education have to accept MOOCs as a phenomenon and legitimize it. This is the same debate back to correspondence schools where we send the examination out, the readings out, person filled out by hand, it came back as an answer, and then I graded that. That we changed into continuing education as it was called, went by satellite, for example. Today, it can be done on a MOOC. So MOOCs, we need to legitimize, accept it, endorse it, make it accredited, give regulatory bodies like AICTE or University Grants Commission accepting it, because that's the reality. 24/7 culture, 24 by 7 by 365. Students want to live in virtual communities now. People generally would like to live in virtual community. They bond better with a virtual reality or virtual community. For example, for mass market, you have the Farmville. Somebody, you as a person own in this virtual world a farm, or you are in Second Life, where you are imagining a life other than the current life. And I know for a fact people who really are so much involved, they forget the real physical world. That is the power of this technology, transforming the society in general. In fact, on a societal level, I already made the point that we are going to become more and more like a roommate nation. In other words, kinship is not as important as friendship. Even in the family, we have no time to share things. Eating is a chore as fast as we can get it done. And after a meal eating together, each one goes in their own room. Somebody is doing the YouTube watching, somebody is doing the text messaging. And that is not limited to the grandchildren and children, but it is by everybody. Campuses will have to become smart, not just for security reason why we are doing it, or for energy conservation reasons, but campuses will be embedded with technologies, and the chips are so inexpensive, both for display, for monitoring, for control, for anything. So campuses have to become like cities, smart. In the US, the campuses are very large, miles and miles. If you're a land grant university like University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, Michigan State University to some extent, University of Iowa, think about all the Midwest which are agriculture based campuses, miles and miles of territory, and therefore you have to embed technology to monitor what is happening every place, just like we do in corporate campuses or we do in fact in cities. Campuses are today more like mini cities anyhow, with 15, 20,000 people living and breathing together in the same location. So we are making shopping centers smart. We are making cities smart. Smart campuses will be inevitable. And the last one I want to talk about is very important side consequence or side effect of this whole digital technology, and that is basically social activism on campus. Social activism was always there in many emerging economies or traditional societies in Europe as well as in India. Students are the first ones to challenge the status quo, to challenge the um, orthodoxy. With this technology, social activism will rise much greater. We need to figure that part out. So let me go into the second part of my presentation, which is about the learning, evolution of learning through technology. What I've identified are three different ways of learning over time historically. And on my vertical side is the scale called scale and scope. In other words, both how big you can do it and how far can you go. That is going increasing with each of the learning stages. Before the literacy, the first way we learned was in what I call the farming age or the agriculture age. Most of the learning was through social spoken medium, where we had three C's of learning. This is what we learned. First thing we learned was about craft, skills, master guild. So I have a livelihood. Second thing we learned was congregation or faith, religion, belief system, whatever it is, either a formal religion or the informal praying the deities or going back to the roots, still very prevalent. And a third thing we learned is to coexist in a community. So community taught us a lot of lessons about how to be a good human being, contribute back to the society, do's and the don'ts, ethics, morality, as well as skills. Not as much skills about like philosophy of science or more esoteric things, but livelihood based, skill based knowledge. Now we come to the industrial age where the print becomes the medium, not verbal communication. So from illiterate, we go become literate as it is called. And there we primarily created three R's of learning: reading, writing, and arithmetic, more cognitive work than hands on work. And that was a key shift that we made over time. Industrial age needed workers with literacy. So I can communicate to others not in my language, but I can have workers from all over the world with different cultures, languages, etc. work together. Automate the factory. Frederick Taylor's principles of scientific management, time and motion. This required printing. So print medium became the dominant one, which is still the case, even though technology-wise we have moved on to the next level, which is what I call the knowledge age. We can call it digital age if you wanted to, but I like the word knowledge age because universities are not the only place to generate knowledge, disseminate knowledge, recognize knowledge. In fact, in many areas outside of management, some of the best knowledge is done by corporate R&D centers like the Bell Laboratories, IBM Labs, for example, Xerox at one time. They have as many PhDs as universities have in their disciplines. Many of the medical institutions, for example, pharma industry or medical device makers, they have scientists who are as good scholars as academics. So I think this dichotomy that we think we have a monopoly of knowledge has to go away from our mindset. So the medium is digital now, and it changes the way we will learn, teach, and I call it the three I's of learning. Learning in the future will be more and more interactive, more and more integrated, and more personalized or individualized. So on the next page, I can tell you interactive means better engagement. Student is constantly engaged with the professor or the knowledge disseminator. Better learning, all of the evidence shows you in education that more you have the interaction, as opposed to taking notes, the greater the learning. It's not a memory way of learning, but it is much more experiential way of learning, even cognitive experiences, better retention in the process. Mind begins to store through physical experience or through analogs and metaphors. Imagination even stores the information or the knowledge better. Integrated, which is my favorite. There is something common, and we do all meta-analysis. I've done so quite a few, but we do it within the discipline or subdiscipline. But one has to think about integration between very different disciplines who are always kept apart in separate silos. So, what's common between math, music, and English? There is something common, but we never thought about it. They're all languages. Languages have syntax, they have semantics. Is there any way, and pragmatism, which means usage of the language, can we somehow figure out that what is common language between music and math, between music and obviously English? It's very possible. We have never thought about it. And similarly, what is common between physics and chemistry? Physics is a deductive science, theoretical math essentially. So you can forecast some things. Chemistry is a discovery science, but there's a fusion of the two more and more, where physics is learning from biological sciences, and biological science is learning limits of physical things in nature. Individualized is very much what I call personalization, but to get the economies of scale, this technology allows you to do mass personalization, like mass customization. As we do in the factory, we can do in higher education, which is I don't have to have classes of 20 students, 30 students, etc. I can have thousand student class, not necessarily in one building, even distributed wherever they are, and each one can be having an individualized lesson because of the technology. So this is a very important benefit the technology is creating. So I can have message just for me as opposed to message for the broadcast whole class, and I can have a one-on-one education with economies of scale of mass production. Mass customization came as a concept in manufacturing from that viewpoint. Different paces for different pupils. Some are quite ahead. Some students like to read the whole material 2-3 weeks out. Some are always lagging behind. Learning is the same thing. Can we individualize in terms of the speed with which people will learn? I think that's possible because the technology allows us to have an asymmetric uh, discussion or asymmetric communication. Bots and robots, as teacher says, I'm clearly convinced that at least in the advanced countries, our teaching assistants will be more bots and robots. We can't afford to have graduate students. We cannot have access. They're not available even. Out of sheer capacity problem or shortage of those students, we are likely to actually engage in having technology as an enabler. If a robot can guide somebody in a department store like Home Depot, greet them, for example, I can do the same in the classroom. So, what are the implications for educators like us? I think first one is that tablet replaces textbooks. Today, I don't need to have physical books. More and more content is becoming ebooks. Is it possible by the policy as well as the purchasing power to shift that? We as administrators have that power to do it. Students love it because they don't have to lug so many books onto the campus. And as I said, memory is infinite, cheaper than paper. It is also good for the publishers because the cost is lower to produce, but also I can adapt and make it more real time. Like every 15 minutes, I can update my textbook today, as many newspapers do, as many magazines do. It's very possible. We have not thought about it. So, what is core becomes peripheral, which is print, and what is peripheral, which is the digital content as a supplement to the textbook, becomes core. Flipping the classroom, we already talked about that one. Bots and robots as new teaching assistants. Learning to curate knowledge, I think we need to design courses for students and faculty how to take this infinite knowledge inundation. It's a tsunami, but how do you organize it so it is very easily accessible when we need it, etc. More a library science skill set or a museum director skill set. And more there will be greater self-learning and participation. Self-service is here in everything. We do ATM on our own to get a cash from the bank. Today on my mobile phone, I can recharge money from my bank account. I'm doing all the work. People are used to that. And in the university setting, we need to encourage more and more self service, self participation, and self learning. And students are also knowledge generators, not knowledge consumers. So let me conclude. As we transition from the industrial age to knowledge age, the 3 R's of learning will be replaced by 3 I's of learning. Learning will be interactive, integrated, and individualized. The digital technology will make learning more egalitarian, easy affordability and accessibility through better, as I said, affordability and accessibility. Video will become the primary medium supplemented by printed material. We clearly see that the trend. The next generation of young people are basically what I call a YouTube generation. They're used to having everything in a video format first. Video actually is more comprehensive, more impactful because in print we had to compromise only 2 senses. Well, only one sense, visual, but sound that comes in. But we have 5 senses. In video, I can add a lot more sensory reality, either through artificial intelligence, artificial virtual reality, whatever I do. It's very important to understand next generation of students will be YouTube generation. So it's more video backed up by writing. Embracing digital technology is not just a nice thing to do, will become a necessity as the library or the knowledge goes to the laptop. Emerging economies such as China and India will leapfrog the PC revolution. We are already into the mobile phones, and mobile phones are in the hands of everybody, and it'll embrace smartphones and tablets as a future device on which we have a knowledge stored, knowledge learned, knowledge interacted, whatever we do. Digital technology will be transformational in the way we teach, interact with students, and govern the institution. Public policy will become increasingly important in this transition from the industrial age to the knowledge age or the digital age. So policymakers will have to come about intellectual property rights of the content blending that may take place. All of these are going to be massive debates and cannot be resolved by free market process. Actually, you have to have some policy guidance in the way. I hope you have enjoyed my lecture. I am again so sorry I cannot be there in person. I do want to add one more thing. Academy of Indian Marketing and ASMA have partnered now to create a digital maturity index for all higher education institutions. I think it's very important that those indices or rankings motivate best practices can come about in the process, learning from each other because journey going from the brick and mortar and print to more and more digital and virtual is inevitable. The quicker we embrace, the quicker we transform, especially in India, the more we will lead the world, not just in India. Thank you very much. And again, my apologies for not being there in person.
It's definitely too long.
Is it too long?
34 minutes.